What's good, YouTube? This is Al-B back with another video. Today I'm going to be reviewing the maudio Oxygen Pro MIDI controllers. Now I'm specifically going to cover the mini and the 32 key versions in this video, but between these two versions you're going to understand the full line of keyboards and be able to select which one is best for you. Now before we get into that, you already know, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so I can keep bringing you guys this dope content, all right? Without further ado, this is Al-B. Let's get into it. Yes, sir. All right, guys, we're gonna jump right into it. First, starting from the left, of course, you have your pitch wheel, your mod wheel, you have your octave where you can go up or down the different octaves so you can play different notes. Then you have 4 sliders. Okay, these 4 sliders can actually control up to 32 different tracks because you have about 8 different banks inside that you can switch between and be able to control the volume, for example, of different mixer tracks up to 32 different tracks. The same is going to apply for your knobs, right? You only see 4 knobs, but in actuality, you can control up to 32 different tracks just because you have the same set of banks for your sliders and for your knobs. So you can use both of these to control up to 32 different channels. In FL Studio, this will control the mixer track volume, and this will control the panning of the same track. So this will control your mixer track volume, and this will control your mixer tracks panning. Okay, up to 32 channels in FL Studio. You have an encoder in the center here, and this encoder is just used to do things like change what DAW it's set to use, or change what preset it's using, or to edit your chord mode and the different modes. You're going to do the editing, and the changing of certain options is going to be based on using this encoder here. You also have 8 different pads, but there are only 2 banks of the pads, and so you only have up to 16 tracks that you can kind of trigger, or 16 different signals you can send from the pads, right? Now, depending on how you have this mapped, will determine how that works based on your MIDI mapping or your MIDI template that you're using. In the case of out of the box and how this works with FL Studio, your pads do not work in the most convenient way or the best workflow. If you guys have seen any of my other videos, I do make MIDI templates specific to FL Studio. And for this controller, I'm also going to make one that allows you to use your drum pads like a drum machine, where you can use one pad to trigger a channel, right? And you're going to be able to tap it out like an MPC, where you can have sample chops or drum chops or one shots or whatever you want, effects, percussion, whatever you want assigned to a pad. You just have it in your channel rack, and this pad will trigger that channel, and you're going to be able to do live and loop recording with it. So stay tuned for that. Check the link in the description. I'm going to be coming out with a video that's going to show you how to do that with FL Studio. But other than these pads, out of the box, this keyboard works great with FL Studio. Like I said, the sliders are going to be assigned automatically. The knobs are going to be assigned automatically. The rewind, fast forward will work automatically. The stop, play, and the record button will work automatically. Now, I haven't tested this with other DAWs, but from what I understand, it works really well with the other DAWs as well. And some of the DAWs that are supported are pretty much any DAW you're going to be using, right? It supports Studio One, it supports Pro Tools, it supports Bitwig, it supports Reason, Reaper, Ableton, right? And again, FL Studio. So a lot of DAWs are supported right out of the box, and this is one of the best integrated keyboards out of the box that I have reviewed, and I've reviewed quite a lot of them. One of my other favorite keyboards is the Akai MPK Mini MK3, which really doesn't have a lot of things automatically mapped, and so you do have to use like custom templates to get that one to work really well with FL Studio. So I am very pleased to see that the Oxygen Pro series is really integrated right out of the box. A lot of times FL Studio doesn't get love, but that's okay. If you're not an FL Studio user, then that doesn't matter as much to you, but it's good to know that this thing will be integrated very well with any DAW that you choose. That's going to be one mode of the keyboard when you have it in DAW mode. You can then turn it to preset mode, which is where you can have your own custom user presets and you can have the sliders and the knobs control different things depending on what mapping you have inside of your DAW. So 2 different modes for the keyboard to operate in: DAW mode and preset mode. DAW mode is going to be when you want it to integrate seamlessly with your DAW by default. And then preset mode is when you want to do more custom mappings and more custom controls from the controller. You're going to want to have your own custom preset. What else is there? So the keys, as far as the keys go, the keys feel pretty good. They're a little small, which I guess that's why it's called the Oxygen Pro Mini in this case. I do also have an Oxygen Pro 25, which is not mini, so the keys are more regular size. So if you have big hands, you may want to consider getting the Oxygen Pro 32 or the 49, or just getting a bigger one that will have full-sized keys. As the name implies, the Oxygen Pro Mini has keys that are miniature, so they're small. Not a big problem for me. I don't tend to do a lot of melodic playing. I might play a few notes of a melody and kind of go back and stack my melody, but I'm not playing very intricate melodies by hand, and so this is not a problem for me. And it has a great amount of portability for this, right? But yeah, so this is really a great keyboard as far as the functionality goes. Some of the additional features of the keyboard: you can arpeggiate from the keyboard. You can also go in and edit how the arpeggiation is working, whether it's arpeggiating up or down or both. Okay, also, you know, how fast you want it to repeat the notes. You can latch it so that when you press a note, it continues to arpeggiate until you go to the next note. So you have a lot of good options for arpeggiation. Very similar with the chord. So when you go to chord mode here on the keyboard, when you press a key, it's going to play a given chord based on how you have the chord mode set. So with the chord mode, you can change, for example, the root note of the chords. You can change the voicing of the chord. So whether you want it to play you know, just 3 notes or 4 notes, you know, whether you're playing a minor third. I don't want to go all into the music theory. Okay, the point is, this really helps you guys out when it comes time to do chord progressions. You can edit the chord and have a lot of control over how it plays it. And all you have to do is press 1 note. Okay, then you have scale mode. This is also going to be helpful for those of you who aren't, you know, very good with playing the keys and who may not know music theory that well. When you put it in scale mode, you're going to be able to set what scale you're trying to play your song in or your track. And no matter what note you play, you're going to be playing in scale. It'll pretty much choose the next note in the scale, right? So if you press a note that's not actually in the scale that you have it set to, then it's going to automatically just choose the next best note to the note that you played. So almost anything you play should sound good and will definitely be within scale. So this is another really helpful feature of the keyboard. Again, you have your basic stop, play, record. That's going to work just fine. You have tempo where you can set that. You have note repeat, right? So you can do drum rolls or hi-hat rolls or whatever you want if you want your pads to repeat. And you can also latch it just like you can with Arpeggiator, and it will continue repeating a note or pad until you move to the next note or pad. Yeah, that's kind of it, guys. Nothing too crazy going on. Again, some of the biggest benefits to this is how many tracks you can control with this small keyboard. You can control up to 32 mixer tracks, both the volume and the panning. You have 16 different pads that you can control from. Again, that's 2 banks of 8, giving you 16 total. You have Arpeggiator, you have chord mode, you have scale mode. Okay, you have your basic transport, stop, play, record, rewind, fast forward. You have DAW mode, where it's going to integrate seamlessly with your DAW, whatever DAW you choose. Then you have your custom preset mode, where you can make your own custom mappings, and you can go between the different modes depending on what you're trying to do. So this keyboard is really good. As it compares to some of the other keyboards, I still am a big fan of the Akai MPK Mini series. I have both a Mark II and a Mark III, you know, the MK2 or the MK3. Have a lot of videos on those. Big fan of those guys, but just quite frankly, it doesn't come as ready to be integrated into your workflow as this Oxygen Pro series does. So this here that I'm showing you guys today is the Oxygen Pro Mini, but they do have other versions and other sizes. There's the Oxygen Pro 32, which I also have sitting right behind me. I'm going to show that to you guys as well, so you guys can see the difference in that. So just, stay tuned a little bit more, and I'm going to show you guys the difference between the Oxygen Pro Mini and the Oxygen Pro 32. All right, guys, now that we have both of the controllers in front of you, we have the Pro Mini at the top and we have the Pro 25 at the bottom. I want to just talk about some of the main differences and the similarities as well. Starting out with the similarities, you're going to have the same functionality, right? The difference will just be how you get to it. For example, you're going to have art, you have chord mode as well, you have scale mode as well, just like on the Mini. You have a DAW functionality and you have a preset functionality, so you can go between the tightly integrated DAW mode and then you can go to your own custom preset mode. You have pitch and mod, obviously. You have your octave up and down. You have your LED screen. You have your transport controls, right? Rewind, fast forward, stop, play, record. You have note repeat. You have the same functionality. You have your pads here. This is where things start to get a little bit different. When it comes to the knobs, the pads, and the keys, that's where your main differences are. The Pro Mini has sliders. We don't have sliders on the Pro 25, but that's okay, because just like you control the volume using the sliders on the Mini, you're going to be able to control the volume using the knobs on the Pro 25. The way you do that is these pads allow you to change what DAW mode you're in. So when I hit Shift and DAW pads, you can change whether or not these knobs are controlling the volume or whether they're controlling the pan. Okay, and you can still do this for 32 tracks in total, because there are 4 different banks and there are 8 knobs. So 8 times 4 is 32. You can control 32 different channels as far as the volume and the panning of those channels. When it comes to the pads, you see the Pro 25 has 16 pads. The Pro Mini has only 8 pads. Now, you still can control 16 channels with the Pro Mini, right? Because the Pro Mini only has 2 banks, bank 1 and bank 2, as far as the pads go. So you only can have 16 different pads, right, with the Mini. When it comes to the Pro 25, you have 4 different banks with 16 pads in each bank. So whatever the math is on 16 times 4 banks, that's how many unique pads you have and how many unique signals you can send from your pads. So you do get a lot, pretty much twice as many functions out of your pads you're going to get on the Pro 25. So that is a big plus. But when you come down further and you look at the keys, this is where you have your trade-off, right? Your keys are larger, you have full-sized keys, right? So if you have big hands like myself, this is going to feel much better than it does on the Mini, right? The Mini, you got to make sure your fingers are all kind of tight and make sure you can press your keys and your notes as you intend to. That's a lot easier to do with bigger, full-sized keys. And it feels better because it's bigger, because it's heavier. It just feels much better of a quality than the Mini does, right? The Mini still feels good for what it is and for what it costs. But I like the way the Pro 25 feels a lot better. So all in all, you have the same functionality. It's really just a different form. You don't have the sliders, right? So you have to control the volume with the knobs. You do have the same knobs, so you can control the pan and the volume with both of these controllers. You have the different pads with both of these controllers. You have all your functions and modes like art, chord, and scale mode. You have DAW and preset functionality. You have your transport controls that integrate seamlessly with your DAW if you set it up properly. So you have the same functionality with both of these controllers. So it really comes down to what form factor do you want. If you're someone who travels a lot and you like to take your keyboard to the studio and you fly a lot, you may want to go with the Pro Mini. If you're someone who's going to usually be at home or maybe just go across town, you may want to go with the Pro 25 because it's also still very portable. Both of these are very portable. The Mini is more portable, obviously. So you just got to kind of make your decision. If you like big full keys, then the Pro 25 is what you're going to want to go with. If you're okay with small keys because you want something you can just stuff in your backpack, then you're going to want to go with the Mini 32. So those are the type of things you have to consider. But as far as being able to program this, as far as the software that comes with them, being able to edit your own custom templates, they're going to be practically identical. It's just a matter of how you get to a given function may be a little different, but you're still going to have the ability to do the same thing from the controller. But there are a couple of other things that you don't see with the naked eye that make this a great keyboard. Number one is I love the way the MIDI values work. So you won't make the mistake of accidentally changing values when you're just changing the different banks that you're on and you're trying to control a different mixer track. You won't have the issue of you go to barely move a control and it makes a given value jump all the way up or jump all the way down. These function in what's called a soft takeover mode. And soft takeover means that it won't change the value of a setting. In this case, if I'm changing my volume, it won't actually change the volume until I go through the volume that's already set, right? And this prevents it from jumping all around the place. If I just make a slight adjustment, it won't jump the volume all the way up to this point if the volume wasn't that high. That's really, really critical for those of you who like to use your controller in that way and actually use it for mixing your volume and or panning, right? It'll prevent you from accidentally making changes or making changes that are bigger than what you're trying to make. So it'll help you have just more control and more accuracy in what you're doing with your controller. That's a big one for me and makes this keyboard special because not a lot of keyboards function in that way. The second thing that makes this keyboard really powerful is the preset mode, right? With the presets that you can configure, you can really get even more power out of this controller. It already comes really powerfully integrated with most, pretty much all the DAWs you're going to be using. It comes ready to work with those, but when you go to preset mode, you can get even more functionality out of it. You can control the velocity, right? You can set it to be a static velocity, or you can have it be more dynamic depending on how hard you press the pads or how hard you press the keys. You do also have aftertouch on the back of this controller. You do have the ability to put in a sustain pedal. So there's a lot more to this controller than even what you can just see from this view. And I just wanted to give you guys some of that. The software that comes with it is really nice. The way you edit it is really easy to do. You can change the colors of all of your pads to whatever color you want to. There are RGB backlit pads, so you do have the ability to change those to whatever color you desire. Those are just some of the additional features that you don't quite see with the naked eye, and that you won't just see on front of the keyboard. But all in all, guys, this is a great keyboard. I'm a little surprised it took me this long to find it. I know they released it sometime last year. Somehow I missed it, but I'm really glad to have stumbled upon it. I really like the way it feels. I think it's going to be a great addition to my studio and going to be something that I plan on using quite a lot, actually, because it's so nicely integrated with FL Studio that I'm looking forward to using it and the improvements it's going to have in my workflow. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button if you haven't already. Let me know what you guys think about the Oxygen Pro keyboard. Are you interested in getting one yourself, or how does it compare to your favorite keyboard? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, guys, this is Al B, and we are out. Yes, sir.